Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker, host of the Love You Even More podcast. I'm an author, marriage and family therapist in training, performer, and 2-time Emmy Award winner. Each week, I bring on people from all walks of life to talk to them about their inspiring stories in the fields of self-development, relationships, business, and how you can love yourself even more. For more about me and the podcast, visit us at loveyouevenmore.com. Welcome, Denise Schoenwald, to the Love You Even More podcast. Denise is a licensed mental health counselor and a registered nurse. She's been practicing as a counselor for over 10 years and was a nurse for 30. And she is going to talk to me, and we're going to talk about couples therapy. She wrote this incredible book that I literally could not put down, and I am not kidding, called Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes, which I was like, wait, what? Once I started reading it and what that means, which we'll talk about, it's exactly what people need to know when they decide to get into a relationship, really of any kind. So Denise, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about what that means. Elephants don't marry giraffes.
It's a great title, I thought. When I first, I was doing some work down at the court system, and through that, I had to become a family mediator. Mm-hmm. So I had ended up having to take all these classes to become a family mediator and so forth. And so one of the instructors, she said, when you mediate with couples that are having a divorce, you'll see three things. One, it'll go pretty quickly. Like one takes the couch and the other one takes the two chairs. Mm-hmm. She said the second case will be something like they will argue and argue and argue for hours and hours over the lamp. Mm-hmm. And she said the third case is one of them wants to get out of the relationship so badly, they'll gnaw off their arm or foot to give it to the other person if they'll get it settled. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't understand why people would argue for hours and hours over a chair. And she said, what can I tell you? Denise, elephants don't marry giraffes. And I love that because it made so much sense to me. And so when I wrote the book years later, I thought, I'm going to use that title because it's just really catchy and it really explains a lot.
It really does. I mean, and you don't mean it in the sense of like different cultures or so. You mean it more in personalities and values. Yes. Can you talk more about what that is?
What I've noticed since I've started to do more and more couples therapy is, I guess with any sort of craft, you see a lot of patterns. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed when couples come that have really had years and years of problems, they likely both will have some sort of a personality disorder that develops in childhood. Mm-hmm. And they connect at that level, at sort of the level of dysfunction that they're struggling with. And so I just thought that was really interesting that if we don't do our own work as individuals, we're likely going to partner with somebody that has a lot of the same issues that we struggle with. And it's not likely going to be a happy relationship.
Right. So what's interesting about this book is there's short stories of each kind of case, and they're not set as cases, but they are short stories of different types of relationships and different types of issues that can come up. You talk a lot about narcissism in a few of the different stories and personality disorders. Mm-hmm. Narcissism, as we all know, is a very overused word, but I also think that there is more narcissism happening these days than ever before, or at least than has ever been publicly talked about. Mm-hmm. When a couple, because this is very common, when there's a couple and there is a strong, independent, successful, let's just say woman with a narcissistic man, you discussed, love bombing, which everyone on this podcast listening is like very aware of it, and how that eventually there comes a point where the love bombing stops and it switches for that narcissist because of what?
Well, it's interesting, and we probably should go back to what the love bombing is. With narcissistic personality, the love bombing is very strategic. And so they're looking for a partner that absolutely loves that and doesn't sort of get a red flag from that. But once sort of that time period has ended, they realize that they've got that person exactly where they want. And they can pretty much, they'll tell them what to do. They're very controlling. And the more that that sort of goes on, the more difficult it is to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, narcissistic men can be very, very successful.
Mm-hmm.
So typically what I see is, they make a lot of money or they have a very powerful position, and the partner feels somewhat trapped because yes, they love the lifestyle, but it comes with a lot of difficulty with temperament and control and emotional abuse, unfortunately.
Right. Absolutely. I lived through that actually. It's confusing because I'm successful and I would like to think self-aware. I'm becoming a marriage and family therapist. I'm very aware of the psychology of this, but
Mhm.
you're still a human when you get into this kind of relationship and then don't see it coming. Like you get the tiny red flags, but you're like, well, maybe I'm overthinking that. And when
Yeah.
other people are like, no, you're overthinking that, you'll listen to them because you want someone to say, no, 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 it's okay. He really is as great as you think. And then
Mhm.
it's little by little. I think it's funny that you mentioned elephants in the title because there's that quote, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time or something like that? How do you
Mhm.
boil a frog? Anyway, one of those animal references where it's a tiny little bit at a time, and narcissists are wonderful at doing that. Can you describe more of how they create that control? Because to people who haven't been in that kind of relationship, it seems so obvious, like, oh, well, if they're controlling or trapping you in any kind of way, just leave.
And usually by the time you realize that you're feeling trapped or you're feeling sort of that they're taking up too much control and power, it's usually too late.
Mm-hmm.
Narcissists are very crafty and they know how to say little things, and they're wonderful with understanding and being perceptive of energy. So they'll say a few things, and they see if you sort of notice that and whether or not you overlook it or maybe accommodate whatever they want. And the more that they get in, I call them web weavers. They remind me of little spiders. They're weaving and weaving and weaving. And before you know it, you're in a situation where you feel trapped,
Right.
where they usually try to pull you a little bit away from your family and friends because they're a little bit concerned that somebody's going to notice and see them for who they are.
Right.
They usually, when they come for therapy, they usually start off with a lot of compliments. And after they figure out that maybe it's not working with the therapist, they usually do not want to come back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When we talk about personality disorders and two people finding each other, how let's actually go back to sort of what creates a narcissist. And
Mhm.
obviously it's going to come from family. I mean, we all kind of know that, but let's talk about kind of what creates a narcissist.
Mhm. Underneath a narcissist is a lot of insecurity. So, what happens in childhood with a normal development is we're in a home with either parents or grandparents. We've got a lot of encouragement, and we've learned rules and structure and values and so forth. But some children have not grown up in that kind of environment, maybe with neglect, abuse, a lot of tension, addiction. And so what happens with the personality is they develop an over exaggerated sense of themselves. With that being said, they can be very successful because there's certain professions that plays right beautifully into. Politicians, attorneys, some police, CEOs of companies, where that power and control can be very helpful with that type of personality. When they go to partner, they need to partner with somebody who will allow them to do what they do,
Mm-hmm.
to be in control, to constantly fill their cup. Because, by the way, no matter what you do, you cannot fill a narcissist's cup.
That is for
Care.
sure.
I
You make
don't know
a
how
great
many.
analogy where it's like taking a pitcher of water and pouring it into an empty hole. That's exactly what it's like.
It is. And so, no matter, even if you give them everything that they want, it doesn't last very long at all before they need something else.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, a narcissist will sort of partner with somebody who either has dependent personality. We used to call that in graduate school the clinging vine, the person that doesn't put any boundaries down, that accommodates, they're people pleasers. They
Mm-hmm.
don't, they get very anxious when other people are unhappy. So that makes the narcissist that's a perfect partner for a narcissist. The other is somebody that has borderline personality. This is usually it's women more than men, but I've seen obviously lots of men with it too, that have difficulty regulating their emotions. So they generally have a very, I call it dysfunctionally functional relationship.
Mm.
There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, typically when they come in to therapy, they usually don't last many sessions because that's unfortunately how they bonded together, and it's never going to be healthy.
Got it. So let's talk about that more, because you do talk about the two different types of, personality disorders that can come up. So borderline, you just said they're not able to regulate their emotions. They're very high, they're very low. Can you give more examples of that? Because I think personally, and I might not be alone, when I think of bipolar and I think of borderline, they're different, but they feel a little similar.
Exactly true. And so what will happen is a lot of times when people are around somebody with borderline, they'll say, oh my goodness, she's so bipolar. But with borderline, children have difficulty regulating their emotions. That's why they have a temper tantrum at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
As we get older, hopefully parents, teachers, pastors, coaches have helped us regulate and self-soothe.
Mm-hmm.
But some children have never had that guidance. So when they grow up, they have this difficulty controlling their emotions.
Got it.
They scream, they have a lot of meltdowns, and they do it quickly, which is, bipolar is usually a little bit more of like weeks or depending upon which episode that they're having. But the borderlines go quickly. So they'll cry in a session, cry, laugh, yell. And then next thing you know, they're happy and so forth. They switch very quickly.
Okay.
They typically will create chaos out of a very simple situation.
Got it.
I referred to them before as push-pull.
Mm-hmm.
They want you near them and then they don't like you at all and they push you away. So they have a lot of tendencies with that borderline personality disorder.
Right. You make a really good example of that with one of the cases where one of the clients is really loving everything with therapy and then suddenly says that you're gaslighting her. Mm-hmm. And she's like, this isn't working for me. And she leaves, but she's been through multiple therapists.
Yes.
So go on.
I was going to say, and that's not atypical. And a lot of times I've gotten so even when I'm talking to somebody on the phone, I can see the tendency.
Wow.
Sort of all over. And typically they overshare. So
why do they overshare? Is that just because they didn't get the attention they needed growing up?
Yes. And so they lack boundaries. And with relationships, when we start to share stories, that needs to be earned. And when they call for therapy, it's basically trying to get an appointment, scheduling, going in, seeing how you feel, and then starting to share. Mm-hmm. Not as soon as the therapist picks up the phone, do you start going into your whole story? It's a little bit too quick.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you find that people who don't have borderline are also kind of oversharers, or is it more sort of in that realm?
Not all. A lot of people struggle with boundaries. I mean, this basically has to do with the relationship you have with yourself. They're not really clear on what they have to offer, what they will accept, what they won't accept. Mm-hmm. They tend to be people pleasers. Mm-hmm. And so forth. But if it's been going on long periods of time, all the way back to childhood, you have to consider borderline depending upon how, what the temperament is like in session.
Right. So if we're looking at a borderline personality female and we're looking at a narcissistic personality disorder male, what is that going to kind of look like?
Well, it's usually a very long hour. It depends upon how the session is going. A lot of times the narcissist is very controlling. In fact, I talked about this in another one of my books. I had a couple that came in and he had his medications in a bag. And I said, oh, do you take medications? And he threw the bag at me and he said, you can read them for yourself. And then during the session, I kept looking at her. She said not one word. He pointed at her, he called her all kinds of names and trying to, I mean, so that's sort of an extreme case. But at times when he would sort of go on a tangent, she would stare into space, almost numb out and get disconnected.
I understand. Yeah, that
Mhm,
sounds right.
mhm,
So, when we are thinking about what two people are bringing to a relationship and their own baggage, you talk so much about, and we all know that we need to do the work. But I think a lot of people aren't even aware of what the work is for themselves. Like, where do I even begin? What work do I need to do? I think a lot of work is very hidden by just not knowing.
mhm.
What do you suggest people do to sort of start doing their own work on themselves to see if perhaps they do have, maybe they're undiagnosed for something?
Well, certainly, just in general, it's really important. And I do an exercise where I have people make a big circle. And I say, inside the circle, write the values that you feel that you offer in a relationship. Like I'm honest, I'm loyal, whatever that looks like. And I
Mhm.
said, that has to be, when you're looking for a partner, that has to be something that's respected. Because a lot of times, if you say, I'm honest, I'm loyal, and that other person is not and does not respect that, that's not likely going to be a good relationship.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of us have a lot of values in our circle, and then we allow other people to do whatever they're going to do. And we never really sort of, put the foot down, if you will.
Yeah. A lot of that sounds like attachment issues. If you're
Yes.
anxious or avoidant, there are secure attachments out there. We've met them. They're out
Mhm.
there. But typically, an anxious attachment person tends to go with an avoidant attachment.
Mhm.
So when we're just say, someone's just in a couple and they're starting to have relationship issues, and they come to therapy, what are they kind of looking forward to? Like what's going to sort of happen in those first few sessions? Because a lot of people are scared.
Mhm. And usually the number one, I guess, complaint or concern is we don't communicate with each other well.
I loved that you wrote that. I was like, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And so typically, if they're arguing a lot, that's how they're attaching to each other. And so, what happens when we're constantly arguing or we have difficulty with our own temperament, the vibrational energy in the body is very low.
Right.
And so the nervous system is out of balance. So it's going to be hard if you have a healthy partner and you yourself are not particularly healthy as far as your nervous system. It's really not going to work.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it's really important that, I understand what is the problem? What is the problem? It's usually one is yelling and screaming and the other one sort of clams up and doesn't say anything. That's usually what happens. But
Mhm.
there certainly are other scenarios too. And so now we have to work through that. If they've been doing that a long time, then we got to look at like whether there's a personality disorder and whether they're willing and able to work through that.
Right, because so many people are so willing and ready to just point the finger and be like, it's all him or it's all her. Like, if she would just change, everything would be fine.
Mhm. And I have seen a typical case is the husband for years and years and years did his own thing, and the wife stays home with the kids and so forth. Finally, they're married 30, 40 years, and she says, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Well, now he's totally invested. So he wants the marriage to work, and now she's going to punish him.
Mm. Yep. That sounds
So
about
that
right.
and so no matter what he does and no matter how much therapy comes to, she's not willing to forgive and move forward. And so that can be challenging also.
How does a couple kind of work through that? Because that is a really common case.
Well, it can be difficult. And I'm in Florida, so I see a lot of people that have been married 40 and 50 years. And it's amazing that this has been going on their whole marriage. But what they realize is they only have 10 or 20 years left and they don't want to live like that anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
Maybe their high executive husband is now retired and he's got a lot of time on his hands. And now she's decided she doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Do you think it's
So.
just because they have way more time together as well and the kids have
Mhm.
been long gone.
Yes. And so now a lot of the problems that probably they've been busy overlooking are now bubbling up and becoming a real difficult situation for them.
So, what could they do to start connecting again?
Well, that can be really difficult. One of the things that I have to sort of understand is, are they willing?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times they both go, listen, we've been married a long time. We want to make this work and so forth. Okay. Then they're really open and they usually do really well. But particularly if the woman's going to punish him, usually at some point I ask to meet with them separately and I really have to have a heart to heart because, how long are you going to do that?
Hmm.
You're either willing to forgive and move forward or you're really not. Talk a little bit about that in Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes.
Yeah, I mean, that's really tough. And I think, whether it's that scenario or it's another scenario where a woman is like, I'm so cheating is a really good example of
Mm,
punishing, right? And when are you going to either leave and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't trust you. I never will. Or when am I going to lay down my sword and actually
mhm.
try to give you the opportunity to let me trust you? How does someone even get to a place where they can start trusting again?
That one can be a very tough answer because sometimes people are I forgive you and I understand, and the other thing is both have had a part in this relationship, and not saying that one's responsible for the other one cheating. Certainly that wasn't the ideal choice, but they both play a part in the marriage starting to fall apart.
Hmm.
Typically the person who's been cheated on doesn't want to take any accountability.
Hmm.
And so that can be difficult. It's also difficult. I see a lot with men is when they go to some sort of relief, they do go to sexual relief, emotional affairs, and so forth.
Hmm.
Women, we would take it a little bit better if they would go to alcohol and something else, but we take the sexual, the infidelity very personally.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that can be really tough. And a lot of times they're just not willing to forgive. And then I said that, well, then you really have to be willing to leave the marriage and move forward. But they're not willing to do that either.
Yeah, and then you're really just kind of stuck. I
Hmm.
like that you talk so much about it takes two. Basically, it takes two to create a marriage, whether it's good or it's bad. And
Hmm.
again, as much as people want to point the finger and be like, it's them, and sometimes it is a lot of them. Like, if you're
Hmm.
a happy, well, I don't say positive, but like, if you're a healthy individual and then you partner with someone who does have a personality disorder or a lot of wounds that are just gaping open and just never addressed, yeah, it's probably not the right match. But if in this case, when you've been together for so long, which it could still be the same, right? That partner could still have the gaping wounds they've never worked on. You've tolerated them. And now you're like, that's enough. I'm done tolerating. I like that you're saying like it really is both of you contributing to this. Like the person who's like, well, it's not me, but you allowed it. And that's
Hmm.
such a tough pill to swallow. But
Hmm.
at least if you can take responsibility for your part, even if it's less or smaller, it
Hmm.
helps you to not choose that same kind of person again. But you also talk about, you have cases in here where women, there's a lesbian couple where one of them goes and like leaves her wife for someone
Hmm.
else. And the same situation happens again. And that is so common too. Can you talk about why that's happening?
Well, what happens is when we get out of these relationships, we never really heal from why we were in the relationship to begin with, or why all the dysfunction happened to begin with. And so what happens is we just repeat the patterns. We
Mhm.
see that a lot with addiction. Somebody will stop drinking, but then they go to eating or they go to
Mhm.
smoking or whatever they do. They don't really fix the core issue. They just go to something else to fulfill the need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also very surprising for a lot of people when they do find themselves in the same situation after they feel that they've done some work or been to therapy. What are some ways to kind of catch those red flags early on if you've done a little bit of work, but you're like, ooh, this person's so, wonderful and I like them so much. What are some
Mhm.
things that they can look for in any situation that might be like quick red flags?
I think one of the things that for all of us is when something happens that we're not sure about. So now we're not sure how this is sitting. The first thing that we go to figure it out is the mind. And the mind is like a computer. It remembers things that it's done before and so forth. It's not the most insightful helper that we can ask for. And so a lot of times when people say, I'm not sure about this, and I'll go, well, how did it feel when that happened? So I'm trying to get below the thinking mind. How did it feel in the body? It's like, well, it sort of didn't sit well with me. And I say, okay, well, then you need to give it some time, because when there are red flags, if you give it time, you'll get some clarity. A lot of times we're quick to sort of overlook it and move forward. But when it doesn't sit well, we need to sort of give it a little bit more space to see what that really means.
Yeah. Do you work with them like somatically? Like, where do you feel this in your body? And if you do that, what does that look like for people who are wondering?
Well, as many remember, when I was announced, I was a nurse first. So I was a critical care nurse. And when we don't deal with emotions, certain emotions are sort of processed in different parts of the body, we will end up being physically ill.
Right.
So one of the things that I notice is what chronic health problems that they have, and I'm understanding what emotions they typically struggle with that have contributed to that. So basically what I'm trying to do is helping them sense or feel energy in the body, and then sort of understanding what that means.
So if someone is having like chronic digestive issues like IBS or, stomach aches or, any of that, what like emotions are stuck there?
Well, if it's a stomach issue, so that's in the solar plexus, emotions like fear, sensitivity to criticism, trust is there, low self-worth. With the stomach, the relationship with themselves is not good.
Yeah.
So they'll typically partner with somebody who maybe doesn't value them and they tolerate it. What they will do is overeat, not eat, or drink a lot of alcohol.
Oh my God.
That's sort of what will happen. Now, if we go a little lower to the intestines, we're looking at guilt. That's a big one for down there. Power and control is there. Money issues can be there. So it's relationships are usually sort of, so that sort of sits in the gut.
Right. And then what about the heart?
A heart is, well, certainly there's some good ones there. Love, forgiveness, compassion. You feel someone's heart when you feel those. But sort of the not so good ones, anxiety is awful on the heart, anger, bitterness, resentment. So these are not only hard on the heart and lungs, but for women on the breasts.
Right, right.
So if you're looking at breast cancer, breast issues, look at those emotions. And I've never had it not connect.
Yeah, I agree. I find this very fascinating. I've been studying this a long time too. What about, what was I just going to ask you? Oh, you talk about frequency, and you did mention it already, but can we get a little bit more into that? Because I loved that you brought that up, especially since we're talking about where things are manifesting in the body.
Well, emotions that we feel have a frequency to them. They're measured in what they call hertz. And so a very low vibrational frequency emotion is like shame. Guilt is very hard on the body. It's like a 20 to 30 hertz are these very, very heavy emotions. 75 hertz, which is still pretty low. If you figure 1,000's the highest, 75 is grief. And if you've ever grieved somebody, you know how heavy that is on the heart. Also, anxiety, stress, and worry is at 75.
Wow.
And so what happens when we hold these emotions, and many of us are very attached to our guilt and our anxiety. We go there very quickly, but we don't realize how hard it is for the body to hold these emotions. The body's working really hard. Eventually, the body will break down.
Yeah.
When the body is at a low vibrational hertz for a long period of time, the mind gets very active, and the body's like, listen, I'm really working hard here. And the mind's like, oh, no problem. Let's go get a drink, or let's go eat, or let's go. It comes up with something out in the environment to feel better.
Yeah.
But low vibrational energies with more intensity are anger, jealousy, ego, these are very hard on the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when we have these energies or this vibrational hurts, we likely can't hold it in anymore. So
Mm,
we will say something that we shouldn't say or do something that we shouldn't do. Many people feel very guilty after that
right.
because even if we're right, it's not usually well received.
Yeah.
And then we stay in this low vibrational energy. What I have been finding recently is what people are going to for relief are their devices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
seems to be our favorite thing because again, the body wants a little bit of a break
Yeah.
and the mind likes, to look on Instagram or whatever we're looking on.
Right.
And so this seems to be sort of the number one, not realizing it's very hard on the mind. Keeps us in our what they call our sympathetic nervous system.
Wow. It's interesting. I actually just recently took, well, I'm not on a break. I think this is just the norm now. I took a break from scrolling on Instagram or
Mhm.
TikTok because I was going to it for some sort of a relief as well, just to scroll,
Mhm.
like doom scroll, as they say. And I was
Mhm.
doing it at night, and then I would do it when I'd wake up, just like check all my notifications, and then I just start scrolling. And this morning, like a few weeks ago, I just stopped and I was like, I feel actually icky. And that was the word that came up. It was like
Mhm.
icky, disgusting. Like, what am I doing? And there were so many things attached to it. Like, that's a whole episode of like doom scrolling. But I stopped. I was like, I remember it was a Thursday. I was like, why don't I just take a break from like today until like Monday and see how I
Mhm.
feel?
Mhm.
And the first day was strange because I could feel that addiction of like, I would normally scroll right now watching TV because the TV show got boring and now I'm going to scroll, but I couldn't do it. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then the next morning I woke up and I immediately wanted to like check everything. And I was like, no, go do something else. And it was so incredible because it releases you from this addiction and this very low frequency. And after that, I was fine. Like I love not checking. I'll check my messages because I kind of have to for for this.
Mhm.
But I really am not scrolling anymore and it is so incredible. It reminds you that there's an entire like other world. And I
Mhm.
say all of this because I think that when we're in a toxic relationship or a toxic place in our life, that's our bubble. Just like
Mhm.
Instagram or TikTok is that bubble that we're in. And maybe we're using Instagram and TikTok for different reasons, but our bubble is really hard to burst.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
what are your thoughts about bursting the sort of bubble we get stuck in?
It's interesting what you were saying. I started probably about a year or two. My first hour in the morning is no social media, no nothing. And it really helps you sort of ground and connect and stay present.
Yeah.
But I was noticing I had less fatigue. I was not procrastinating as much. We don't realize how much mental energy it really takes from doing so much scrolling. And without even realizing it, we will eat more sugar and carbs when we do
Oh
that.
God. Well, this is all good. We should definitely quit this.
Mhm. Yes. I mean, one of the things when I work with teenagers is, and usually I procrastinate, I'm always exhausted, and I'll say, well, what is your average screen time? 6 hours, 7 hours. And I think, well, how long are you awake? I mean, they're not really awake that long, but they're all up at night and they're scrolling and they don't sleep well, and then they're
Yeah.
chronically exhausted, and it's really something that I think many of us are just sort of not recognizing that this is one of the things that we go to for ease, and it's very harmful.
Right, right. So when someone is trying to find much healthier coping mechanisms, what are some things that they can do?
One of the questions that I ask her, what are your hobbies? You would be surprised where people will say, like, I don't know, I like to go on vacation, but they only go on vacation twice a year.
Yeah.
So whatever their hobbies are, I say, do you make time to participate in your hobbies regularly? No. Okay, so I already am understanding that the nervous system is probably pretty much out of balance.
Right.
Do they have a relationship with God or a spiritual practice? If they do not, that's a little bit concerning. Friends, do they have a good network of friends? If they say no because I work a lot, pretty much know the nervous system's out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out what kinds of things that are healthy that they find ease through. Walking the dog is great. Listening to music is great. Going out with friends is great. But many, many, many people do not take the time or make the time to do things to give the body some relief in a healthy way.
I think that's a perfect way of putting it. It's relief. It's not coping. I mean, you are coping on a sense, but you're giving your body relief and your brain relief to just be calm. And, people will say, I just want to be calm. Like, I just want to be calm. I'm trying to be calm. And I'm like, that's not how you're going to learn how to be calm if you're trying to be calm. You have to actually like let yourself be calm and take away the things like doom scrolling that make you not calm. I love this. Are there any other amazing, things that you should tell people about just kind of picking the right partner also, but knowing yourself? I feel like we've covered a lot, but if there's anything else that you'd love to share, I'd love to hear it.
I think if I could encourage everybody to do one thing is make time for your self-care. You're not going to find a healthy partner. You're not going to be a healthy partner if you don't start to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
Most of the people that I see do not take the time or make the time to take care of themselves. They work a lot, they're parents, they're busy, and I certainly understand that, but if you don't carve out time for yourself, you're eventually going to get sick, and you want to do that so that you can be wonderful and give a lot of love and compassion and forgiveness to other people, and you can't do that from an empty pitcher.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Denise. Tell people how they can find you.
I would love them to visit my website at deniseschoenwald.com. I have featured on my website 4 books, and if someone would like to visit the website and let me know, I'd be happy to send them a book as a gift for listening today.
I love that. I will definitely have that in the show notes. You can go click on it. Definitely read Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes. Loved it. I'm going to give it to my mom to read. It was a great book. Thank you so much for coming on.
Welcome.